All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome this afternoon or morning, wherever you're calling in from. My name is Jenifer Rackliff. I'm the Executive Director of the National Indian Child Care Association. And today we are going to be talking about construction and the opportunities that we have in front of us right now to really build some incredible facilities for our communities. I am happy to be here today with Studio MLA, and I'm happy to introduce them. They are doing some amazing work in tribal communities specifically, but also around the country and around the world as well. They are an architecture, landscape, and interior design firm located in Boston. And they do a lot of client-specific design work in all sorts of spaces, but particularly for us in children's environments, youth centers, multi-generational spaces. They're nationally and internationally renowned, and they're leaders in the integration of sustainable design and natural spaces, which would include play spaces for us, which is where my head is. And they focus on the collaboration of education and how it incorporates into the community and how we can build community around these facilities. So I'm super excited to have them join us, and a little plug for them. This is a precursor to their joining us at our national conference in September. So they'll be doing a hands-on interactive day-long workshop at our National Institute in September at the Choctaw Resort in Durant. So with that, I will say welcome Studio MLA, and please.
Thank you, Jenifer. We'll just go around and introduce ourselves. That was a great introduction. We'll have to get you to introduce us in other places too. This is really good. We're excited to be here today and to see everybody virtually. As Jenifer said, we're even more excited to be able to hopefully get together live in September and talk more. As Jenifer mentioned, we're really interested in children's environments and how they can have a positive impact on the programs and the children and the families and communities that serve them. And so our favorite thing is really, digging in and working with childcare educators, providers, communities to provide indoor and outdoor space that works, really well for you.
And I'm Danielle Stingone. I work as a designer at Studio MLA. And as Mike mentioned and Jenifer mentioned, we really focus our work on early education and childcare design. And we do a lot of work with communities. And we're really interested in kind of making sure that our work really caters to the specific end user in any project that we work on.
Hi, I'm Joanne Hiromura. I'm a landscape architect, and I'm head of the landscape and playscape design department at Studio MLA, and we work with the architects. But our focus is designing all the spaces outside, which is mostly focusing on play spaces. And we like to learn a lot about our clients and their communities. We know that every community has their own special culture, and we work with you to understand that culture and to design an outdoor play space that works with you and your curriculum and who you are. And so we're very excited to talk more about this today.
So Jenifer asked us to talk just generally today to give an introduction to designing for children and children's spaces. And so that's what we're going to do. I think as this image shows, one of the important things that we try to keep in mind all the time is to keep a child's perspective top of mind, so that we're seeing things or trying to see things in the way children do. Historically, designing buildings and outdoor spaces for children is a relatively new endeavor. The turn of the 20th century in the US, educational thinking with Dewey, and in Europe with Froebel and Steiner and Montessori, all of those were about putting the child at the center of their own education and thinking about how they were kind of constructing their own knowledge. And what's come out of that, I think, for us is how the environment is incredibly important to that. And we're, we, all of us here today, are part of the project that we're engaged in is creating these environments that can help children create their own knowledge and learn about their cultures, the natural world, and themselves. So designing for these things is relatively new. And initially, a lot of the designs were based on other models of buildings that did exist before. So things like schools, and unfortunately, sometimes things like hospitals and prisons, where with the idea that this is a place where we have to watch out for these people who can't really take care of themselves because they're young and don't have a lot of knowledge. So obviously, we're not trying to design things that look like schools and looks like prisons. So one of the things we're doing every day is working with educators and providers to try to, really get to what is the right way of making spaces for children. There is also a more recent history of architects getting involved with designing things for children. And I think those have had, sort of mixed results. One of the things that sometimes tends to happen is the architects think a little bit more about the architects than they do about the children and families and educators. And so we end up with buildings that, may be really cool or maybe really cute, but don't necessarily functionally, work for the teachers, and don't necessarily make families feel comfortable, and don't necessarily give children the best environments in which to thrive and learn. So part of what we're going to talk about today is just a bunch of ways that we look at environments. And then I think every project is different, every community is different. So we would encourage you to sort of think about what we're showing you today, and then take that on board with what you know about your local culture and whatever your building or your site is, and then come up with your own sort of set of criteria. One of the things we do know is that birth to 6 years old is really one of the most important time of children's lives in terms of cognitive development. Also, it's very important in terms of social emotional development. And this is when children really have the opportunity to learn a lot in a very powerful way. And we also know that they're not really learning in the same way, for example, college students or adults learn. They're not reading in books and memorizing things. They're not having people teach them things and then taking quizzes at the end of the week. They're really learning through experience with their peers, with their teachers, with their families, and with the environments that they're in. We also know that childcare, early education, for a lot of children, will take up a pretty good chunk of their childhood. So while they are spending time in their families and their communities and outside, they're spending a lot of time in childcare potentially. So I think this places a really great responsibility on all of us to make sure that those environments are really great places where the children can learn and thrive and develop. And so how do we think about that? There's an expression that was first used by Lawrence Malaguzzi, who founded the schools in Reggio Emilia, who talked about the environment as the third teacher, with the first two teachers being really the family and the teacher, her or himself, and the environment being the next teacher that often we don't think as much about. And so because children are learning through experience, because they're learning by what they touch and what they see and what they, all their other sensory experiences, as well as their interaction with their peers and their families and their teachers, this just becomes critically important.
Yeah, so as Mike had mentioned, the environment really does play a critical component in shaping children's early development and early years kind of life and school. So, the children interact with the environment, in a variety of different ways, using a myriad of different senses that are really just starting to evolve and grow. So, it's really important for kind of us as designers and architects, but also for educators to pay really special care to the sensory input in an environment and how that can really impact the cognizant development and growth. So we're going to talk a little bit about some of what we're calling sensory scapes. So it's really just about developing this kind of common language that we can use to start thinking about and talking about design and kind of the critical components in children's environments. So what you see on the screen here, this is probably one of the more accessible ones, kind of the lightscape. So I think everyone can just kind of readily understand, the impact of light and how it can affect us at any given time. Historically, as designers, we tend to talk about light in more of a quantitative way. So really, like lumens and light output and how many foot candles you might need in any given space. But when we're thinking about lightscape in children's environments, it's also really important to think about the quality of light. So, on a very basic level, I think we all, can understand how light can affect our feelings, right? If it's a bright space, we might feel more energized and active, kind of ready for the day. But if you turn the lights down low, suddenly you might feel more soothed or relaxed, or in the case of, again, childcare, it might indicate that it's time for a nap. So there are all different types of light, and it's important to kind of think about not just what those different types of light are, but kind of how they can be controlled and capitalized on. So on the image on the left here, you can see this is like a sensory and library space that we did for the MIT Lincoln Labs out here in the Boston area. And this is a space in which, there's a lot of different types of artificial light. So you can see the pendant that's, up on the ceiling, and it's kind of casting intricate shadows, which can kind of, start to play into the concept of, how light is cast and how shadows are created, with light passing through objects, and in this image, all the lights are turned up high, but at certain times they might, in this space, they'll turn all the lights off and they'll just kind of leave the light hanging from those little, colored fairy lights in the corner, and that there's a light table down in the corner of the image as well that the children will use to kind of do different exploration. So, lots of different ways of thinking about light in that space. On the image on the right, which is from Nurture Learning Lab, which is another great project that we did. This is an art studio. So this image, while there is artificial light in this space, this space and this image is really focused on the idea of natural light and how it can, impact a space. So kind of in the upper right-hand corner, a little bit off screen, you can see there's this great kind of light well. So this big double height space in which light filters in from the clear story window above, and it's kind of streaming down on that art sink that the child is using. And then in the kind of in the left side of the image, you know, there's this kind of these great northern facing windows, which is in the area of the classroom that most of, you know, the painting and art activities happen. And as you can see, you know, here we've got that light being filtered through the use of kind of operable screens. So just the concept that, you know, light, both, you know, natural and artificial, can be really varied and controlled within a space, kind of, you know, throughout the day or the year or the week, or, you know, however it's really needed to function for various activities. Okay, so Chromoscape. This is really about color. So, you know, when we think about how children typically interact with color in their early development, you know, they learn, of course, they're learning the color spectrum and the different names of and types of colors that exist. You know, obviously red, green, blue, yellow, so on. But as adults, we know that that's, you know, that's not it, right? There's not just one type of red, one type of green, one type of blue. There's a spectrum there. There's variations in hues, saturation, brightness, gradient. There's, you know, transparency. So there's all different ways of thinking about color and introducing color into an environment that can, you know, impact kind of how children, you know, learn about the concept. So you know, we'd like to think about introducing color in more, you know, of a controlled and purposeful way. So, you know, we're learning about, or when children are learning about, you know, integral color, right? We can think about how, you know, there's the color of wood or the color of plants, like you see in this image here. But there's also, you know, there's applied color, like the color that's kind of added to these slats on the fence. And in this picture, what we're highlighting, this is again another image from the MIT Lincoln Labs. So in the corner of the image, you can see there's just this black kind of chain link fence. And this is, you know, what's basically surrounding the majority of, this is an outdoor play space. So, you know, the fence is what's kind of, you know, it's keeping the children in, it's keeping them safe. It's a durable material, it's a cost-effective material. But, you know, this kind of wooden portion of the fence, the more forward-facing, outbound area that's kind of protecting the play space from the parking area, we chose to, you know, integrate a little bit more design. So with the wooden slats, you know, adding color and different kind of different transparencies and adding kind of shade and shadow to create kind of an impactful moment as part of the design. So again, just thinking about, you know, being really purposeful and impactful in how we choose to use color, how we choose to talk about color, and kind of where we choose to integrate it. Great. So Materialscape, you know, this one is really about, you know, the materiality of a space. So it's, you know, it's really important for, you know, when you're thinking about kind of spaces, and especially when you're thinking about spaces at, you know, for children, like to think about the materiality that's at children level. That's really what they're experiencing and what they're interacting with on a day-to-day basis. So this is an image taken from a project we did out at Penn State University Child Care Center. And what's interesting here, so we introduced cork flooring as a material in the classrooms, and you know, the cork is great. It's a soft material. It's warm. It brings a really rich color to the space, and it's got a really interesting texture. But what's really great is that the teachers actually really latched on to the idea of cork, you know, not just as a material in the classroom, but as an educational tool. And they've started to kind of integrate the cork into their curriculum. So the children, they learn about all of the different properties of cork, its density, how cork can float. They learn about how it's harvested and where it's grown, and how it's a sustainable material. So again, finding opportunities to introduce interesting materials that are experiential and that create new experiences for children, but also having educators that are able to kind of take that and leverage that information to use it to introduce new concepts like sustainability or science into the curriculum. All right, so aromascape, is an interesting one that's probably somewhat underlooked when we think about traditional, design of a space. So obviously there are pleasant odors, like, see this image, it probably looks like it smells pleasant, right? You've got these beautiful, beautiful flowers, and you can think of, plants and herbs. But there are also, as we know, in any building, in childcare buildings, there are less pleasing odors that might occur, right, on a day-to-day basis. So just thinking about, how we can manage and control odors in a space, through, architecturally, through kind of proper ventilation, or allowing for, operable windows so that you can have airflow through the space, and, can kind of have a more pleasant aromascape as you're walking through. We can also start to think about how we could introduce smells into a space. So for instance, if your program has a kind of a kitchen and the staff is in there all day, baking delicious cookies, it might be that you want to think about how we can design or locate that kitchen to be more, more forward facing, more, up and in the kind of in the entry space, so that that scent, that aroma can kind of, waft through and become part of the aromascape of the center. So this is really just, again, about being thoughtful and mindful and cognizant about how scent can impact, someone's experience of a space, whether good or bad. So soundscape is another kind of, there's some duality as well for this one. There's positive aspect of sound in a space, and there can be some negative aspect too. So, I think it's important to think about opportunities or places where children can make sound, right? As in this image where you see this great musical instrument that Joanne actually designed. So being able to integrate sound into the environment, you can also imagine like an activity space or gross motor space where the sound would be, that of children playing and laughing and kind of, loud active noises.
I think
but
just
also,
to add to this,
yeah.
just to, so, these are musical chimes, and they happen to be tune chimes, so they're very melodic, and you can play songs on them, but sound can also be more of an experimental quality, where of course pots and pans, or you could I'm sure seen hanging different pieces of materials used for chimes, like wood chimes, metal. How does that sound different than metal or plastic? So there's a lot of different ways you can do it, and there might be different goals that you have for experimenting or having kids discover sound, but either very beautiful melodic to more cacophony of different types of sounds.
I'll just jump in to say also that these particular chimes that you see here are ones that Joanne actually designed and had built. So one of the things that our Playscape department does is really take the needs of specific organizations or communities and really try to figure out how to make them happen. So.
Thank you.
So I'm just going to go back for 1 second though, because I do want to just kind of talk a little bit about, there are the opportunities for, of course, wonderful sounds throughout spaces, but we should also, we want to just make sure that we're paying attention to kind of, how different spaces call for kind of varying needs, a variety of needs in sounds and acoustical treatments, right? So while it's of course important to have spaces that might be loud and active and full of sound, we know that in childcare or in many spaces, there are also, there's the potential that you have a classroom of active children next door to a classroom of, babies sleeping, right? So how do we manage that sound? How do we treat the space acoustically to make sure that all of these different activities can happen under one roof, and interact well together, kind of without, interfering or, impacting one another. So and just in general, the soundscape, there's under any roof, there's going to be a variety of different sounds that take place, but just being mindful about how those sounds can work together. Okay, so so tactile qualities, this one is kind of relates back to what we talked about earlier about materials and materialscape. So this is again really about kind of that experiential level, that experience of children, both kind of indoors and outdoors, and how they kind of interact with the world. So us as people, we all kind of experience the world through touch, and I think children especially so. Just ensuring that there's a variety and richness of materials within a space, because there's a difference between kind of the softness and warmth of wood, or the cool sleekness of metal, or the roughness of rocks, or graininess of sand. Just making kind of decisions about the quality of the materials, and of course the safety of the materials, but also the variety of different materials that children can interact with throughout the day.
And I would just jump in and add that I think in terms of variety, sometimes it's actually, you really have to work at it to get a variety of materials in children's spaces. The way we tend to build things in the US today, there's just a general tendency toward materials that are smooth and uniform and simple and easy to assemble. And so you can end up very easily with spaces that are a lot of sheetrock and acoustical ceiling tile and vinyl tile, and not a lot of tactile richness. So I think it's important to really think through those issues and how they might get used in any given project, even in small quantities. I think it's more a matter of paying attention and being sort of insistent on it. It's not that hard. You just have to make sure you keep it front of mind, really.
All right, and so gustatory, so having to do, of course, with taste. So we can really think about this one in relation to kind of the outdoor spaces that we design, and just there are a variety of different plants and herbs that can be introduced. Of course, first of all, non-toxic plants and herbs, but that they can be used then to play a part in the curriculum. So one example is a project that we had done for Boston University or Boston University's Children's Center, and they have a really great gardening program for the kids. And so the children, they learn how to grow plants, and they track their growth and the quantities throughout the season on this really cool sustainability dashboard that they have. And then, they are able to taste those plants and kind of relate what they're growing to the taste and the flavor. And then, when it's time to harvest them, the plants get harvested, and they can be kind of brought into the kitchen where the staff can use them to prepare a meal or a lunch. So really, again, finding opportunities to integrate kind of taste into the environment and the curriculum.
Yeah, and I think in this project, which is at Keene State, the kids, it became a very robust gardening program, and the teachers and the kids experimented with different recipes. They actually, put a cookbook out, and it just also provides kids with the opportunity to taste vegetables that they wouldn't normally taste, maybe that their family doesn't eat, but they're a lot more willing to try new things, I think, outside of their home sometimes. And another opportunity, we're working with the Snoqualmie Indian tribe in Washington, and we're in the design phase with them, but they're really wanting to bring in their native culture into the center, want to grow native, indigenous plants and herbs for harvesting and cooking, to teach the kids historically and culturally plants that are important to their history and their tribe. So it's a really great learning opportunity to have a gardening program. So there are other senses to consider. Designing spaces outdoor, proprioception, vestibular stimulation, interoception. So there are pieces of play equipment that provide swinging or spinning, balancing, and that provides kids with the experience to test out their abilities with those different sensory elements.
These are all words that we just learned over time, right? So proprioception has to do with your sense of yourself in space, and it's something that develops, from birth to 6 in a really important way. Vestibular stimulation has to do with stimulating your inner ear, and it has to do with developing, balance. And then interoception, which I think is the latest one we learned, right, Joanne? And this is like internal regulation, like when you flush, your face gets red, or when you sense exterior temperature changes. So it's all about having really just varied sensory environments, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And then these images, well, can we go back to that a second? These images also talk about just some other parameters that I think we often come up against or are dealing with. So some of these, for example, have to do with collaborative play. In this particular project, Joanne, I don't know if you want to talk about these pieces, but.
Sure. So we work with this school, and we work with them to help them develop their goals for their play space. And we work with the teachers, the children, the staff, the parents, and we, in talking with them and finding out who they are as a community, one important goal for them was to have a play space that promoted cooperation. And so actually we chose play equipment and play elements that required you to cooperate with each other. So that spinning piece in the middle, you can see the kids on the bottom, have to actually pull the piece in order to spin the piece. The children themselves made up rules about how to use the piece together. So that one of the rules was if a student says, "I want to get off, stop," the other children have to stop the piece. The same with this middle piece with this big rope. One child on one end of the rope affects the other child trying to balance on the other rope. So other end of the rope. So we deliberately looked for and selected play elements that would support their goals for what, how they wanted children to learn and interact when they're out on the playground.
The other goal for this playground that they set was something that they called appropriate risk. So they had a wide age range on the playground. It was preschool to all the way up to 7th grade, I think, or 6th or 7th grade. So they wanted it to be challenging, safe for everybody, but challenging for everybody. So we also worked, including what you see behind the rope thing is a giant 12-foot high by 12-foot wide slide. So they worked really hard to have things that were challenging but safe. And I think that's another piece sometimes that we can lose track of as we're focused on safety, eliminating risk as opposed to understanding that a certain amount of risk is important to child development too.
So talking more specifically about play and your outdoor space, there's certainly so much evidence and research these days about the benefits of spending time outside in nature, that it supports well-being for not just children, but everybody. It has been proven to help reduce stress and symptoms of attention deficit disorder. They found that children tend to be able to focus better after they've spent some time outdoors. Richard Louve's book, Last Child in the Woods, identified, our culture having and children these days spending less and less time in the natural outdoors and developing this nature deficit disorder, because really as human beings we're part of nature, and we need to actually be in nature and be connected with nature because we're part of it. And so really taking advantage of your outdoor space and providing as much nature in it helps children reconnect with the natural world, and it also helps them become better stewards to keep the health of our earth healthy. So you'll see a lot of natural play spaces in these images. So, in thinking about designing your outdoor space, you want to kind of step back and think, what are you trying to provide for the kids while they're outside? It's, they're playing, they're learning through play, and what types of environments support that best, and what types of elements gives you the sort of maximum, widest, broadest, richest environment, so that they're being supported in development in lots of different areas. So thinking about how to create a space that is interesting, comfortable, varied, changes. So natural spaces kind of just do that automatically with seasons and life cycles of plants and attracting birds or animals or insects. So, nature just is a great basis for play and discovery. This is an image of the play space we designed at Boston University. And you can see that there is a lot of variety, and there's a lot of different types of spaces. We created a play hill, there's paths, there's different materials, there's a sand play on the right. Underneath the trees, we included like hammocks, so places where they can swing and also sort of lie on their backs and look up into the sky and through the leaves. So thinking about how to create an outdoor space that has a lot to discover in, is important.
I also think this image, I like it because it seems like it's got kind of what we feel is almost the right density of stuff in an outdoor play area. I mean, obviously sometimes space is at a premium and things like that, but where we have space, I think the idea that some of it is unprogrammed space that's left for children to just do things and use their imagination is really important, but that space still feels like it's an integrated part of a natural whole, rather than it's not a big asphalt patch or whatever, right? It's really part of a bigger environment.
Yeah, so I think one key tip might be to think about creating a variety of spaces. Oftentimes when we go see an existing space, it sort of seems like all the same surfacing. It's a kind of wide, big space with objects in it. But thinking about creating different size spaces, creating like maybe special areas for specific activities, really starts to create a richer environment where you get a different feeling from, being, in a corner that's all shady, with trees around you, than, up on the hill where, it's higher, maybe open in the sun. So, in this space, it's very simple, but these tree stumps actually divide the space a bit, creating sort of, sections, different areas of the play space, fairly simply. And then in the next slide, you can see that the stumps themselves are not just a border, but they're used for, the kids play games on them. They can sit on them. They they vary in height. So depending on the age group, there's different challenge for them. And it's all in a natural, wood mulch setting. So it's a soft surface if they're jumping off or falling off. But you can see how it's a more interesting space, rather than if it were just wide open and it was just a field of wood mulch. And then thinking about different types of spaces. I mean, there are cozy spaces. So this one is just created by vines, overhanging, a little space, creating a little hiding space. Or you could create it yourself with, tree branches, making this little hut, which provides kids with the opportunity for very, small, intimate interactions. Then thinking about vantage points and providing children with the opportunity to see their world from a different view. We created this hill. This originally was just a flat, open lawn space. And we created this hill. It's about 5 feet tall, and we put some nice rounded boulders in the hill. The kids can get up a little higher, see over the fence. It's also in New Hampshire, where there are mountains and rocks. So it also is reflective of, their local landscape, and it provides connections, to, where they live.
The other interesting thing about this project is it was done almost entirely by the grounds crew, by the landscaping crew of the college. So a lot of the natural play elements and natural play landscape can really be done with pretty low tech, methods. And it certainly takes maintenance, and it takes, thought and figuring it out. But it can be a very cost-effective way of providing really great environments too.
Mm-hmm. So this is another hill, used a little bit differently. So this hill, and we did create this hill as well, and for the same reason. But we'll also use this hill as a little amphitheater. So at the bottom of the hill, we put a little stage for dramatic play. We actually found these stone granite slabs on the site. The site used to be a mental hospital site in Boston, and so we were able to reuse these granite slabs that we found. And then creating like different size spaces. So these are sort of small gathering spaces, you know, for either storytelling or small classrooms. The one on the left is, you know, constructed out of deck, you know, material, and we softened it up with grasses. And then we had an artist do a mural on this blank cinder block wall, making it really a cozy spot. And these huge pillows for outdoor pillows are great for the really young kids and teachers to be comfortable sitting, you know, on the deck. On the right, we made more of a storytelling circle in the corner underneath the shade of a big mature tree, using tree stumps as the seats and a big log carved out for the teacher's seat. A big natural sand area that we edged in big logs, and we actually planted a lot of herbs on the edge of this sand area, so that thinking that when kids sat on it, they would just crush the oregano or rosemary, and it would just naturally have this great kind of smell, just, you know, by, you know, sitting there. Open spaces, they're important too. So if you have the luxury of having a big space, definitely wide open spaces are useful for running around, throwing balls, kicking balls. We kept the activity, you know, in the back edges of the space with the play equipment, and then kept the open field sort of a little bit out of the way of the active play equipment areas. Paths are a really simple idea, but they're really important. Very simple to do. We did this with you know, wood decking. Takes you, you know, through trees or through an area, gets you to another place. When it curves around, you might not be able to see, you know, fully where you're heading to. So there's a little bit of mystery, you know, in the way you could create paths. But even something as simple as stepping stones, it suggests a way to go. It also could provide the basis for you know, games, jumping on from stone to stone.
It's also another example of a strategy that we've developed for just making naturally wild areas that are available to us more accessible to children. So in this case, there was an area that was relatively overgrown and swampy actually during part of the year. So we put this boardwalk through it, which allows children access to it and to get used to it and to get into it. In other places, we've had wooded areas where all we've done is go in and just kind of cleaned out the poison ivy and made it a little more accessible and just put a fence around it and said, this is the natural play area. Maybe it's adjacent to a more developed play area, but as a way to sort of enhance or just, you know, take advantage of what we find on the site, basically.
Okay. And then just, you know, providing natural elements, like, of course, sand and water. There's lots of ways you can do this. We try to kind of recreate a stream. The water source is a water pump at one end, and we kind of lined the edge, you know, with a sandy bank. Of course, design it so there's no standing water. And let's see, I think there's some other examples of, you know, there's other ways, of course, to do sand. This is more of a sand box. It's fairly big, you know, with a sand counter at the end with bowls and things for mixing, and benches for either kids or teachers. It's a nice kind of gathering space underneath these trees. And then
Keep
there's
my eye
other
on the
way.
clock, Joanne. We may have to flip through these last few a little more quickly too. We've
Yeah,
got a lot to go,
right.
so.
I know. Water, different ways to do water. This pump is the source of the water is just a plastic container underneath this table, right? So very low tech. The water table has shells and other beach stones. So a fun way to explore water. Natural building materials and loose parts, either community playthings blocks or actual logs and things. Another series of loose parts, just slices of tree trunks, tree cookies, certainly a learning opportunity, learning about tree rings. And, these sort of activities just kind of support social skills and learning how to cooperate together, share, work together. Challenges, obviously depending on your age group, for a 2-year-old, a 6-inch height stump, is a big challenge. The same stump just a few inches higher becomes more of a challenge for someone older. Those logs in the middle, we chose because that play space was for all ages, from infants up to preschool, and we chose these because sort of any age group could use it and be challenged with it as they grow. They would use it differently. Different, same idea, different types of equipment that provide different challenges and sort of grow with the child as they, become stronger and they can do more, and continually challenges them. Creating spaces where kids work together. Obviously, you provide big bowls and water and sand. It means that you need more than one person to help move the big bowls, loose parts, and I mean, basically, you want to create environments where children are learning, discovering things about themselves, and discovering things about their world. This is a very natural play space. We were super lucky to have this site for the Penn State Children's Center next to a mature stand of forest on the campus, and so we really took advantage of that environment and used trees that needed to come down for the building as play elements, and sort of supported it with other natural play elements in their play space.
I think this project at Penn State was a great example of just how being able to work with the staff and the director, because they moved from an existing center that they were getting kicked out of essentially to a new building, really allowed us to fine tune the building and the outdoor play space to work with what they were trying to get at. And that was in addition to really getting the kids into nature and connected with nature. I think we worked with this idea of rich normality. So a place that feels like a comfortable place to be in, calm, but still has a lot of sensory possibilities in it, and tries to put together different textures and materials and sounds and light, all the things that we've sort of talked about so far. This is just a layout of the Penn State Center, so you can see how it's sort of integrated into the edge of the woods. It's actually built on a parking lot, so the shape of the building really reflects the shape of a parking lot, because we weren't allowed to build anywhere where we would impact the roots of existing trees. And this just shows a little bit of the natural light, natural ventilation, and sustainable materials that were used. This is a preschool room. A view of a toddler room from the outside. The grilled screen that you see on the right-hand side is part of a natural ventilation system that lets in air from the corridor, which is drawn in from the cool north side of the building and then exhausted out to the south side of the building where it's warmer. And just another view of the outdoor space looking toward the building across sort of the existing stand of trees. And I wanted to just quickly go through the design process. I mean, this is something that we'll spend more time on in September in Oklahoma. But I think the first, couple of phases, the conceptual design, the design development, really coming up with the vision is critically important, both to getting the kind of project that you really want and it will work for your children, families, and community, but also for making sure that the budget is on budget and that you're going to be able to build what you want to build. The middle part, actually getting the documents together, is critically important because that means that whoever's building it, the builder, has a good set of plans to work from. And then on the right-hand side, bidding and negotiation and construction are places where we've felt that it's really important that the whole team have a good handle on the procurement process, which is, in tribal settings can be intricate and interesting depending on funding sources and things like that. And I think just having everybody have a really good understanding of the overall process is super important to the success of the overall endeavor. I'm going to run quickly through the Lincoln School. Sam, I don't know, do we have time for the movie?
So we were going to ask you about.
So if we do have time, we can either show the short version. It's totally up to Jenifer.
Yeah, why don't we go ahead, and if people have to jump off, they can. This will be recorded and they can come back to it. So if people are still able to stay, why don't we go ahead?
Okay.
We're going to run about 8 or 9 minutes over at this point. So. Okay. So this is, I'll just share, this is a project that we completed just about a year ago. It's a small center in Providence, Rhode Island. But I think the fact that it's small and simple allowed us to, kind of get a lot of things done in a very clear way. So it's pretty easy to understand and appreciate. And we got to make a video of it.
MLA was everything from what we pedagogically needed to have happen here daily, how the design of the building would allow us to best do that. They really listened to the needs of our teachers, the needs of our program, making sure that the building aligned with the mission of the school. It took all of our our tenets of Quaker education, being Reggio inspired, who we are as a program and how we value relationships. All of that was very well thought of in the design of this space.
At the scale of the campus, we were really trying to help create a new outdoor space that linked the younger children with the elementary school. We were trying to give this piece of the campus a more coherent look. The Quaker heritage of the Lincoln School puts a lot of emphasis on environmental stewardship, emphasis on simplicity and on community. So we really took those to heart. Those are aligned with our values in terms of every building that we design. So I think it was a great partnership, and we really tried to reflect those in every aspect of the building, from the overall building layout, the materiality, the detailing, and the fact that this is a LEED certified building and a net zero energy building.
One thing working at Studio MLA, you learn quickly the importance of designing from a child and teacher's perspective. When we're thinking about the height of windows, it's important to set it down low so children can look outside. The floor should be soft and warm, maybe even textured, since toddlers spend most of their time on the floor. And in terms of teacher visibility, wall openings so teachers can have total eyesight over the classroom.
This is our piazza. It is our gathering place for events. It is where our families drop off. This space was originally designed to be a Reggio studio, but we have been using this as a classroom. All of our classrooms spill out into the playground.
It has all different components in it that serve a variety of needs and goals for the children. The whole space is designed to be really open-ended and to give the kids an opportunity to practice lots of different skills. It's great to see kids using the space because no matter what, they will use the space in a way that you didn't think of, and it's kind of amazing.
Over the fence encounters happen all the time. We use this space in so many different ways. We actually put an outdoor carpet out here and we use it for morning meeting. They take stories on the porch. Parents will meet out here with teachers, so we use the space in many different ways. Everyone loves beautiful space. Children deserve beautiful space to work in. Teachers deserve beautiful space designed for its purpose, and that is exactly what we have in this building.
So I think the last thing that we're going to look at, we can kind of flip through these slides quickly. These are just stills of the Lincoln School. Is a project that, as Joanne mentioned a little bit earlier, we're in design right now for the Snoqualmie tribe in Snoqualmie, Washington. Danielle, you want to kick this off for us?
Yeah, so as Mike said, this is a project that's in development right now, kind of in the early stages for the Snoqualmie tribe, and it's a really interesting site and a really interesting story. But basically, we've been working really closely with the tribe and specifically their cultural team to try to identify meaningful ways to integrate, the Snoqualmie specific culture into the design and the architecture, and then just kind of thinking about how that impacts the overall curriculum for the center. So, for instance, one of the really kind of important parts of their culture, at least from what they've expressed to us and what we've talked about, is this yearly canoe trip that they undergo. So, or the canoe journey, as it's called. So, as you can see here, this carving, there's all different kind of, this is the hand carved canoe that they've made. But so what we've done is we've really thought about how that canoe journey can kind of impact the design of the space. So in the floor plan, for instance, thinking about how you move through the space, we've created kind of a corridor that's kind of curves and kind of takes you throughout the center. They've also expressed that, kind of how the phases of the moon and the night sky is really important to them, and what they want to integrate into their curriculum. So thinking about how that can be represented within the ceiling plane. And then just, overall trying to find ways of highlighting and kind of, finding areas to integrate their specific tribal, paintings, and again, beautiful woodworking, carving, and weavings throughout the center. So just being able to kind of integrate, the cultural elements and the important kind of storylines that we've discussed with them into the architecture, so that it's really holistic throughout the center.
I think we've also realized that there are sort of limits to what we as architects can do. So I think this strategy that we really hit on here is we're trying to make the place feel organic and use natural materials, and then we're just leaving space really for kind of cultural artifacts and display and work by their carvers and their weavers to be, places to put them that make sense and are well lit and well displayed. And for this, at least for this project, that seems to be the right balance. But I think that's always something we're looking for.
Yeah, and so for the outside, we actually did pick up on their annual event, the canoe journey, where they different tribes of the area take a week-long. They paddle out in their canoes and they overnight at different campsites on different tribal lands. So we actually designed the play space so that it's a path that winds through different areas that we think of as like islands in a river. There's a play canoe. There are places that you could imagine sort of camping out. And we're working with their cultural team on the plant palette so that the plantings in their play space are all indigenous plants that have some significance to the tribe, and that they can also use it as a learning opportunity.
All right, so thank you, Studio MLA. That was an amazing lot of information, and just the photos, just like smiles the whole time I was listening. So I know that we have people on the phone who are also smiling as well. But thank you all, and I am going to be super brief in ending this with some opportunities that tribal childcare programs have right now. If you'll flip to the next slide. So as you all know, oh, maybe I can do it. No, I can't. There we go. So you will see that, as you all know, that since FY20, we have gotten a significant amount of CCDF money annually. And I started to put all the way back to FY 2018 when we got the 262% increase, but I decided to leave it at FY20. But you can see that we expect to continue to grow our CCDF allocations. The FY23 number there, which is just under 500 million, is projected off of President Biden's 23 budget, which just came out a couple of days ago or last week. What this doesn't include is what was originally put in the Build Back Better plan. And I didn't put that because we don't know where that is right now. We don't know what's happening with it sort of as a whole package. But what I do want to stress and highlight about it is that the Build Back Better plan, the childcare portions of that were not up for discussion or debate. And they provided substantial amount of funding for childcare in general, but also for tribal childcare. Just to give you a sense, I'll give you one data point of what was in Build Back Better. In FY24, you would have seen a 230%, 240% increase from your FY20 allocation. So I just want to put that into perspective for you, because childcare is something that, especially after going through still, I think a little bit coming out of the pandemic, our nation has recognized how important childcare is and was, especially during that time, and the amount of money and resources that is needed to continue to build this absolutely critical resource and service that really helped pull up our country by the bootstraps. So I just wanted to share these annual allocations with you so that you have a little bit of peace of mind that not only is childcare getting a bit bigger national landscape view, they're also putting their money where their mouth is. And I do expect us to continue seeing increases in our allocations. I don't expect this to be, massive 100 times percentage points of that investment, but we are going to continue to be invested in. So I just wanted to share that. I just wanted to give you peace of mind. And if you'll flip to the next screen, because I know where we're standing with our COVID relief funding, and tribal childcare got about 5 times almost of our FY20 allocation during FY20 for COVID relief. That's on the next slide, Gladys, maybe. And so I know that there's been a lot of question and concern about how do we do these programs and make these changes and build all these things, and when we don't know if money is going to continue coming. So yes, money is going to continue coming. A couple of things I want to point out for tribes. We got about $1.5 billion in COVID relief totally. And I want to share that and also say that all of this funding can actually be used for construction of programs. And that was something that wasn't even clear to me until several months ago. But it all can be used for that. You still have the liquidation requirements, so you do have to kind of get on that if that's what you're thinking about. But I also want to share that the ARPA funding specifically, the ARPA bill specifically gave tribes a mandatory an increase in our mandatory funding. So that $42 million increase brought us up to $100 million in mandatory funding every single year that is not going away. That was an increase that was made into the law by that COVID relief bill that will forever affect us. It's not going away. So I want you to take away from this sort of all of the points that we're seeing with these investments in childcare dollars. The money's it's not going to come as fast and as furious as it was during COVID, but what it is, we're still building upon it. So we still are getting that investment, and we still at the federal level as well, and NICA especially is really encouraging you to consider how do we build systems, create communities of early care and education, and you can use all this funding to do that, and know that more funding will continue to come. Childcare is not, I mean, somebody said to me in one of our national calls, every bit of federal funding that you get for anything can be taken away tomorrow. So that is a true reality, but the chances of that happening are almost nil. And we just have to keep building and showing the need that we have in our communities to build these kinds of communities and environments for our children and our communities. So I just wanted to kind of share with you where we're standing from a resources perspective. We are going to get more increases for 23, expected. And then, I think the conversation about Build Back Better, which I think is a $70 billion investment in childcare, not just for tribes, but for childcare in general, I think is still on the table. And it's just a matter of how that's going to come and how and where and when it's going to be fleshed out. So keep advocating for that need, keep pushing your communities to strengthen their systems, build these facilities that are incorporating the environments and the communities around you and the needs of the community around you into them, because when we build that and when we make these investments, we're showing that these investments are needed and needed to continue. And it's a bipartisan issue. Nobody's arguing about whether or not our kids need to have these and our communities need to have these. So if we keep doing it, that need is going to continue to be shown. So with that, I actually am going to take another little bit of second and ask if anyone from Studio MLA would like to give a quick plug about seeing you in September and maybe what people are going to have the opportunity to do if they'd like to join us. And I've put the link in the chat to get more information and register.
Well, thank you, Jenifer. Thanks for inviting us today as well. And as I said, we're really looking forward to the workshop in the fall. I will say at the very least, if we have a whole day, we're unlikely to run over. I think we will have a good day. I'll say a couple of things.
Don't commit yourself to that, Mike. I saw you last time.
Well, number one, it'll be a very interactive sessions. So we really want to get people to kind of roll up their sleeves and, talk to us and work with us about what's important for your communities, so that not only do we learn a lot during the workshop, but we have things that we can really take back to our communities and think about implementing. Secondly, Jenifer has asked us to really think hard for the fall workshop about how childcare can be integrated into sort of bigger picture ideas about community. How can it be part of co-located with other kinds of services, or how can it just have a bigger impact on tribal communities and beyond? And so that's going to be the focus of our workshop, and we're very excited about presenting it.
All right, well, I don't think I saw any questions in the chat, but I will give a 30, maybe not a total 30-second, a 20-second pause to see if anybody has questions. You're welcome to come off mute. All right, I think that was my due diligence. So thank you, Studio MLA. Thank you, Danielle, Mike, and Joanne for joining us. And we are super excited to have you in September. I did make fun of Mike for going over, but they all loved the fact that they were there the whole time. So if you join them and if you do go over, you will love it. I know you will. So thank you guys for joining us, and we will see you in September.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.